Hey, it's Tony Sweet and Captain Ron for Truth Be Told. We are excited to have you guys here. We have a great show lined up for you. Many of our guests that we're going to be talking to the next 2 or 3 months are going to be all from the Contact in the Desert speakers. They're going to be doing workshops and lectures. And this is one of the guests that's actually a returning guest for us. And we have Derrel Sims, the alien hunter, the world's leading expert on alien abductions. His 38-plus years of field research has focused on physical evidence and led his groundbreaking discoveries of alien implants and alien... oh, my God, you say that one. Anyway, as a former military police officer... There we go. I was going to say something else, and it didn't sound right. Sims has a unique insight to the alien organizations, which he believes function similarly to the intelligence agency. So please welcome to Truth Be Told, the one and only Derrel Sims. How you doing, sir?
All right, Captain Ron and Tony. Doesn't get any better than this.
No, sir. That's right. We're together again, and we're going to see each other coming up here at Contact in the Desert, May 31st through June 3rd. So we're excited to see you. But we're going to, for the people that can't make it, that's why we're bringing you here today to bring you some updated information. So, Captain Ron, take it away.
Well, let's start off with the latest thing. I know you have this new sighting back in December. Why don't you talk us about that new sort of a mass abduction?
Well, actually, what happened, the first event of a mass abduction occurred on December 8th and December 11th, 1992. This was obviously some time ago, but the reason it was incredible was because all 8 of the witnesses, as soon as I found out that all been taken, I separated them all and, of course, interviewed them all separately. The remarkable thing was that this was an alien response to basically a trap that I'd set for them to see if they would respond to us. And apparently they did. And we have an independent person who was filming out of Japan at the time, and he filmed toward the moon, and we think that he may have filmed the actual craft where all these people were taken to this massive craft. That craft was described by an engineer who was involved in the event as 50 miles thick and 600 miles across.
I mean, that just seems completely implausible that something could be that enormous, right? Doesn't it? That's just amazing.
It does seem amazing. However, there is a fascinating, I'm all about evidence. I don't care much about stories. So the bottom line is you can go to, on the internet, go to Ringmakers of Saturn, and Norm Bergstrom, a scientist from NASA, puts out a series of pictures of the rings of Saturn with massive craft hundreds of miles long sitting in the rings of Saturn, apparently making some of the rings.
That I've never heard. That is fascinating. Interesting.
It is incredible, but the most interesting, I guess, of all of this was the fact that on board this massive craft, my senior investigator, who was taken in the event, said he was ambivalent to say this. I said, just go ahead and tell me what you saw. He said, well, they took us to this magnificent, unbelievably huge hall that was very dark, but it had enough light in it we could see, but we were focused to look straight ahead, not to look anywhere else. And I laughed and I said, you peeked. He said, I did. I said, what did you see? He said, well, I saw a platybodon. I said, that is a dinosaur that looks kind of like an elephant. He said, yes. And I said, was it dead or alive? And he said, I think it was in suspended animation. And I said, what was so unusual about it? He said, that wasn't the only thing that was there. He said, they had a lot of stuff there. And he said, I don't think anything was dead. And anyway, we've done a lot of work on that since then and found out all kinds of fascinating things about platybodons and maybe what the alien has done with missing people, and certainly you hear these people getting taken out of parks and different things like that. And goodness sakes, this is you wonder where they're all at.
Right.
I mean, where do they go?
And I was going to ask you this because I find it fascinating with when there's a mass abduction, and you mentioned 8, but what is the largest that you've heard of for a mass abduction?
Okay, the largest that I've ever heard of was 266 British soldiers
266.
got taken in 1950 at Suvia Bay in Turkey. They were fighting against I guess, the Ottoman Empire. Now, the reason this story seems credible to me is, first of all of them disappeared and there were no bodies. And second is that the Turks didn't discount any of this. And certainly if the Turks had killed 255 of the British troops, they would have bragged about it. They admitted they had no idea where they went.
Wait, they disappeared? They never came back?
They walked in something that looked like a cloud, and then they just never showed up anywhere.
I was going to say, if we could interview all those, that would be the credible thing. The great thing about having 8 people abducted is you could check the story with each one and see how they corroborate.
Now, and you said
that's correct.
And where was this located? Turkey? It was in Turkey?
That is correct. Yeah, I can send you the report if you'd like to see it.
Please, I'd love to see that. I'd love to see that.
Of course. But I've got a whole list of mass abductions that have occurred through history, and a lot of them, of course, after 40 years investigating this, I've got a mass abduction of 17 little girls taken at the same time, all given gynecological exams. A mother, a husband, and their dog were taken. The lady comes back from the event pregnant, and so does the dog. This is interesting because these are very tree huggers would be the kindest word to use. They don't allow their dog anywhere near any other dogs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The dog turns up pregnant, and so did the woman. So this was an interesting case to me. So those 3 were taken.
Well, in that case, once the baby and the animal was born, what did they ever do any DNA testing, or what did the child and the animal look like?
Well, first of all, this is a typical scenario that in these cases they're called missing fetus syndrome, and the fetus turns up missing, in which doctors normally say, "Oh, well, that was just absorption or spontaneous abortion." They have all kinds of terms for it, which may be true. The problem is, I have the sonograms of another case that I have, and it shows the alien fetus inside the woman. And you say, well, how do you know that to be true? Well, I took the sonograms specifically to a fetal hospital that deals strictly with babies. And they looked at it at 2 different doctors, and they were stunned by what they were looking at. They had no clue. As for the dog in the other case, the puppies were born to the dog. And why that was interesting to me was that the woman who owned the case, had the case, and was the one that was pregnant and lost the fetus. She said, "Derrel, my dogs are never around any other dog. There's no way they could have ever gotten pregnant except in this event, like I did." And I said, "Okay, well, what happened?" She said, "Here's a picture," and she gave me the picture of the dogs, and every one of the puppies looked completely different. They're not even remotely related in looks to the original female.
Interesting. Derrel, okay, so you've been studying this alien abduction phenomenon for 40 years. What do you see commonalities when you interview abductees that seem to be a unifying thread throughout them?
I do. The commonalities will often start off as a person having missing time. In fact, 2 weeks ago, a lady and her husband called me, and they said, we really don't know how to address this. It was going to sound insane. I said, "Just tell me what happened." She said, "Well, we've got missing time, but a lot of times we're driving our car down the highway and we end up at a different location than we're supposed to be, and we don't know how we got there." He said, "We're not on drugs. We're straight-laced people, and live in Colorado." And I said, "Well, you haven't been smoking any of that stuff down there?" And they said, "No." And said, we don't drink, we don't do any of that. And so we're baffled. And so I'm handling the case now to see what we can find in that particular case of missing time lots of different things like this. People come up with phobias or certain stretches of road that they will not travel down. They're scared to death. They have phobias of that, phobias of certain kinds of things about a person, an alien face, a certain kind of alien face. They'll look at it and they'll just get scared and back away. So sometimes that sort of thing happens as well.
Why do you think, like yourself and certain other people, get abducted multiple times, where some people, or maybe most people, always get abducted multiple times, where some people maybe once?
It's really a good statement, because almost everyone that gets taken, almost everyone, it's going to be multiple. It's going to be continuous. In my case, it was over a 13-year period between age 4 and 17, and then it stopped violently. Most people's events continue on into their 50s and 60s. Sometimes I've got one abductee, her events continued, and she's 89.
89.
Wow.
That's.
I haven't heard many people get that old. Usually it tapers off, I think, right, Derrel?
It does taper off. Some people think that's because they're not collecting eggs and sperm on these people anymore, and so they're just letting them go. I'm not sure that's the exact reason, but it certainly is a valid idea.
Well, you've been looking at this for 40 years. That's what I want to ask you. What the heck's going on? What do we think? It seems to be, this field seems to be like slowing down. Like there's not new information. What do you think is actually happening in this?
Well, I have to say this carefully, because I live in this field, and I don't want to offend anybody by saying this. Sometimes the reason you're not getting good recent information is because you're not getting good research. And by that, I simply mean, and I mean this in the kindest way, I don't, like I said, this is not personal, nor do I intend to belittle anybody, but simply I can't answer for why they don't have that information, but I do, and I'm prepared to give you some of it this morning if you're interested.
We would love that.
Please.
Okay, first of all, people are taken, usually it's serial in the family lineage. It can be male, female. It can be 1 or 2 or 3 of the siblings in a family. Sometimes it's only one person, but if that one person says it's only me and my whole lineage, I encourage them to go talk to grandma, grandpa, and so on. I said, if you'll talk to your aunts and uncles privately about your experience, you'll be shocked and amazed to find out you are not the only one. You're the only one in your family, but not in the rest of the family. Second is that we have statistics that we keep on these people as well. I'll give you a couple of statistics that people may not be aware of. And the other statistics we've been keeping since the 80s. And obviously people have hopscotched off of them, and that's fine, because that helps their research, and I don't have no problem with that. But some of the stats we keep to ourselves are people, the number of these people have rare drug allergies to procaines, such as if you go tell your dentist I have an allergic reaction to a Novocaine or any of the cane family, they'll laugh at you and say it's so rare we don't even check for it. Ophthalmologists will say the same thing when they put that procaine on your eye to rest your eye.
Right.
We've seen in some of our earliest surveys, which were quite small, and I admit that, that as many as 30% of our abductees had rare drug allergies to procaines, xylocaine, Novocaine, lidocaine, cocaine, or any of the other cane family. This is so rare, it's equivalent to 3 out of every 10 astronauts joining the astronaut program having this rare drug allergy. It just isn't going to happen. A second fact that may be interesting to you is that many of these abductees, even though doctors and John Mack and others have asserted the same exact thing, there's nothing wrong with them. There's no psychopathology that you can point at there's something wrong with these people. But we have, as another stat that's rather staggering, found that a high percentage of these people have suicidal thoughts that they admit clearly are not their own thinking.
That's interesting.
And why do you think that the suicidal thoughts, if it's not of their thinking, why would the aliens even want to put that in their head? Because if they want to continue the research, why would they not want them to?
Well, it's about control. If you study the alien phenomena right off the bat, you're going to find out that it's about control. When you study the implant phenomena, which I discovered in 1960,
Right.
It's all about control. That's the issue.
Isn't there also a higher percentage of Native American or Irish, Celtic people abducted as well?
Brilliant statement, and I'm sure you heard it from our research back in the 80s. 45% of the people taken would be Native American, Indian, Irish, Celtic, and I'll add a couple other things on there to you that we've not told a lot of people. We told some, but it's pretty rare that I go out and throw all the stuff out because it sounds like bragging. But the fact is that in our opinion, that we're looking at two other groups of people and have for some time, and that is the Basque of northern Spain and the Hasidic Jew.
Why do you think that is? Just the history of the
no more than I can kind of understand the Native American, Irish, and Scottish. The reason I can get along with that is because there are two groups of people that get taken in abduction experiences. They almost immediately divide up into two camps. One of them are abductees. The other group are contactees. The contactee is a person who I call the honeybees. They're wonderful people. They think whatever's happening to them is probably for their best and highest good, that the aliens know better than they do, that they've got it all together and we should just comply. And they do. They're kind of like the bees at the honey that make honey, and then all of a sudden there's a guy out there in a little white suit with large black eyes stealing their honey, and they think it's okay and it's normal. Well, it isn't normal. The second group of people are people like me that are abductees. By that I mean they've been abducted and they know it and they don't like it, and especially when it comes down to their children. And that's what creates a huge problem for some of these people. The bottom line is that in both camps you find Native American, Irish, and Scots as a primary 45% of them. So why is that kind of interesting to me? It's interesting to me because some of my new age people to interview me say it's because the Indians are so spiritual and the Irish are so spiritual. I said, listen to me carefully. I'm both. So I get to talk about both. If you're not black, you don't get to talk about black people. You're not Hispanic, you don't get to talk about Hispanic people.
Right.
I'm Native American, Irish, and Scott, and I'll talk about all three of them if I want to. The bottom line is simply busting heads and taking names is what we did all our history.
Mm-hmm.
You look on the wall of Notre Dame and it says the Fighting Irish. There's a reason for that. It's not just because they play football or basketball or something else. They've got a history of this, and defending themselves is what they've always done. And the same thing with Native Americans. I mean, the people who buy into the story, and I'm not knocking people, I'm just saying I think they should revisit that idea. The last people who believed in this idea that these people are different than I, they must be higher, bigger, better, or gods or something like that to me, so I must obey whatever they want, were the Indians of South America when they saw the ships roll up, and they had the same type idea about the bearded men with the swords and the guns that they brought. How'd that work out for them?
Yeah.
Right.
Right. So what's the bottom line here? What do you think's happening? Why are we being abducted? Why are so many people being taken? What's going on?
Well, I think this, and this is going to fly in the face of a lot of our investigators, and I need to make this distinction, and because I have many friends at MUFON and other organizations, and just independents that are good investigators. Most of those folks hunt the alien with a laptop, notes, a syllabus, or something to record their information, and God bless them. I appreciate that. I do. I hunt the pilots.
You mean of the
I'm
UFOs?
not after just data. Data
Right.
is the least important. It's going to happen anyway. I'm going to get the data, but I'm hunting the pilots. I've got a collection of physical evidence bigger than any human being on this entire planet. And there's a reason for that, because I hunt the pilots. I'm getting evidence. I got 2 pieces of UFOs and numerous implants and even some Bigfoot data that I've had since the 80s. But I say data, it's not data, it's actual material from them. My point is simply this. I'm not content to record my information and I mean this in the kindest way, just get on a radio show and harp about, I've got 25 cases or I've got 50 cases. I've got over 2,000 cases worldwide. The purpose of me isn't to collect more cases. I've got enough. I don't need any more. It's like saying the alien is here and they're doing DNA testing and they're improving our species. No, they're not. That's the biggest whopper that they ever told anybody. The fact is, you say, well, they're doing DNA testing, and that's not what they're doing. And if you've been doing this for 40 years and you're still coming up with those ideas, you might want to think about retiring,
Right.
because you're on the wrong track and have been on the wrong track for
Well, that's
a while.
what we hear. We hear that they're either doing something with the reproductive DNA testing, or they're here to help us. What do you think they're here to do?
Let me give you a couple of flaws in that response. The first flaw is that, they're doing reproductive work on us and so on. That sounds good, except for one big, huge problem. When you take sperm and eggs from hundreds and hundreds of people, what are you doing with it? Where's the evidence? Where are the bodies? And yet on board the craft, we see these tanks and things like that where they are gestating some of these so-called fetuses, babies, and so on. And they're upgrading our species. When is that going to happen? Last I heard, we're still out there knocking each other in the head, starting wars and threatening each other, just like we always have since the beginning of time. So they haven't done a very good job of that. They've been here for, I think, about 6,000 to 7,000 years, maybe longer. But other people say they've been here for 100 million years. Let's take their figure, not mine. When are they going to get started? It hasn't happened. Number 2 is, if they're upgrading our DNA and doing all this and supposedly improving our status in the society or whatever, they haven't done a very good job with that. Historically, there have actually been occasions where they've interfered with different nations so that one side would win over another. You'll see that particularly in the country of India, where I did my last implant surgery.
I was going to
actually claim they nuked whole cities.
Yeah, I remember reading about that. And I was going to ask you, if you think about human evolution, we haven't changed, maybe gotten taller, maybe gotten a little bigger in the last, 10,000 years? I don't know.
Hold on, fellas. I don't think that's what people are saying, that they're trying to upgrade our DNA. They're taking our DNA and using it for themselves.
Because if
they're creating hybrid races of their own.
But we hear on this show, we hear a lot about they're helping improving us, but we still have our sicknesses. We still have our illnesses. We still die. I mean, look at HIV, the plague. I mean, over how many centuries? So, and it's hard sometimes to believe. It's like, well, if they are, like you said, if they're improving us as a human species, they're not doing as well as you think they should be doing. So,
to answer his question, he brought up a good point, which is this is a very complex subject, so it's difficult to get to do justice to it in a short period of time.
Right.
But I would like to comment is the other direction. What are they using the eggs and the sperm for? Mm-hmm. Upgrading their species. First of all, I'm going to tell you something that is important for your audience to know. And again, I challenge people to think for themselves and not take my information as if it were came out of the burning bush. It's just data. It's information. Use it if you like. If you don't, that's fine. Come back in 10 years and you may find out that I'm right. But here's the point. In my view, based on 40 years of research on this stuff, and it actually has some good anecdotal evidence for it. In my opinion, the alien isn't upgrading themselves at all. That never was the point. And I will give you a serious hint here. Most of the things that the alien says is not true. They lie, and they have lied consistently. I'm an ex-police officer. When I see a body laying on the floor and 8 people standing around the body and the knife is in the back of the, and all 8 different people start telling me, oh, it happened this way, and you give me 8 different stories, I promise you all 8 of you are going downtown. All 8 of everybody's going downtown, and we are going to find out what the real story is. And 7 of those people are probably going to be charged for lying to a police officer, if that is the case. And then we're going to find out who did it. Mm-hmm. So what's the point? My point is that makes sense for police work. Now let's transfer that to the UFO field. In every country I've been to, I've heard a different swapper, a different story about who they are and where they came from. In Ireland, they're the wee folk, and if you don't watch out and you don't be right with them, they may take you away and not bring you back. That's called mass abductions again, isn't it? And you go over to Turkey. I was flying over to Turkey. I'll be over there again in September. And on the way to flight there, this guy says, "What do you do for a living?" I said, "They're all Turks on the airplane." I said, "You sure you want to hear this?" And he said, "I do." And for 7 hours on that flight, I told him what I did. And he sat there stunned. He said, last thing he looked at me and said was, "We don't have any of that in Turkey." I said, "Yes, you do." He said, "No, we don't." I said, "Yes, you do." I said, "In fact, I'm going there to speak at a conference. And in fact, there were over 350 people around my table alone just to look at the implants and the evidence from the story. I mean, the actual evidence of that. So here's the deal. If I've got 8 different stories on how they got here, and they're all the same guys, say they look the same, they talk the same, they walk the same, I'm sorry, you have at least 7 of those are lies, and they're not just different stories. Oh, but the alien's just telling you a different story. We have seen 7 different entities, the primary 7 entities on one craft at the same time, and they're all in on it. It's the same stuff. So, in my opinion, the alien that we're looking at, the 7 different flavors, the praying mantis being, oh, he's so smart. He is. He's got an IQ about 180. Really smart guy.
How would we possibly know that?
Okay. Bud Hopkins asked me that question. He said, "How can you deduct that they're?" I said, "Bud, if you're an abductee," he said, "No." I said, "Then you don't have a clue, do you?"
True.
He said, "What do you mean?"
I'll be quiet.
I said, "Have you ever met any smart people?" He said, "Of course I have."
Not
"Have
here.
you ever met any stupid people?" He said, "A lot of them." I said, "How did you do that? Did you give him an IQ test or what?" Well, he got quiet. I said, "Listen to me carefully." I said, you can tell a lot about the intelligence of a person by the manner in which they speak, the linguistic patterns. A lot of things about them will tell you a lot about their intelligence. And just because somebody blathers on doesn't mean they're intelligent at all. I said, but the point is that the small alien, the little one, I said, is hatched, cloned, made, manufactured for the purpose of interaction with mankind to convince you that he's an alien from another planet. The fact is, I use the term hatched, cloned, made, or manufactured. He's not from another planet. He's hatched, cloned, made, or manufactured for the purpose of doing something else. So what is that? So give an example. The praying mantis is extremely intelligent, but where do you get praying mantis DNA? Probably not from Saturn, probably not from Zeta Reticuli, but you can get a whole lot of praying mantis DNA right here on this planet. Well, what about the reptile? Where do you get reptile DNA? Probably from planet Earth. Where do you get the DNA for the Nordic? Probably from planet Earth. Might even go to Norway and get some real good stuff there. So what's the point? Even my native friend said, "Yeah, but the gray alien and the other one, we call them the ant people." I said, "Listen to me carefully. I've got your own pictographs right off the side of these caves, and it shows the gray alien with actual antennas sticking up off of his head 1,000 years ago." He said, "What does that tell you, Derrel?" That's what that tells me is that they upgraded the model. And notice you use the term ant people. They come from inside the earth. They still all come from here. The DNA, this is the cosmic Walmart for DNA. If you're out there looking for DNA to, again, make people believe you're from somewhere else, like maybe the Spanish did whenever they went over to South America and talked to those Indians. I'm sure they got them to believe all kinds of interesting stories.
Now,
Take a
what?
break.
Oh yeah, we actually do need to take a quick break because we want to tell people about the conscious. I keep saying conscious life,
Wow.
but it's
That's
contact
already
in the
over,
desert,
Tony. We
right?
already did
I
that one.
know.
Let's do contact
Let's do
in the desert.
contact in the desert. So if you guys are in the area or you're not, make sure you come out and see us all.
And then get in the area, right?
Get in the area. Go to Contact in the Desert, May 31st through June 3rd. But we have a little known gentleman that would like to tell you how to join. So we'll be right back.
Join me, George Norrie, in Indian Wells, California, for the 7th Annual Contact in the Desert UFO Conference, May 31st to June 3rd. Contact in the Desert is an epic weekend of adventure filled with exciting explorations into ancient aliens, human origins, crop circles, UFO sightings, disclosure, and the newest evidence of ongoing contact. This amazing weekend offers over 50 lectures, 40 workshops, 8 exciting panels, special events, and a luncheon that I'm hosting. Contact in the Desert also features leading experts including Giorgio Tsoukalos, David Wilcock, Linda Moulton Howe, Michael Tellinger, Eric von Daniken, Doc Wallach, and many more important researchers and scientists in the field. Contact in the Desert is your place for inside information. Join us at thecontactinthedesert.com to get your tickets today. It's time to make contact. That's contactinthedesert.com. Don't miss it. Contactinthedesert.com.
And more experts, including Derrel Sims. will
That's
be there.
right.
Derrel, let me ask you this. If all these different stories from across the world have different alien experiences, doesn't that hurt the credibility of the phenomenon?
Well, basically, when I was talking to Bud in Marseille, France in 1994, I think it was, we discussed this quite a bit. And I said, Bud, when you talk to abductees, can't you pretty much decide how a case is fairly much going to go? And he said, pretty much. And I said, there's a contact event, they do this, they do that, and so on. Within 2 or 3 hours, the person's back in their car, room, or wherever they're at, and the event's over. He said, that's true. I said, the reason humans are easy to catch is because they have habits. He said,
That's true. It's very predictable. Yep.
I said, the aliens have habits too. Notice that you just described with me the habits of the experience of abduction. I said, now what's amazing about this is that this phenomena exists from India to Japan to Africa, wherever you go, it's very, very similar. So my point is, if the alien has habits, he can be caught too. And that's the point of being an alien hunter. I look for him because I think that he leaves a trail of evidence. When he touches you, he leaves a trail of evidence on you. He will leave a fluorescent trace on the
let's
person.
talk about that fluorescence. You say that stays on the person's body after the aliens left.
It will stay on the person for at least a 24-hour period. In rare cases, we've had it stay up to several weeks, but that's extremely rare and is a different type of fluorescence. There's 2 different kinds of fluorescence that will show up on people if they, in fact, have been taken in a physical event. And I'll categorically state right off the bat that you can check yourself with a black light and find fluorescence on yourself, and you never were taken.
Tony, you do that at hotels when you go, right?
Well, I
They're
checked
covered.
the mattresses.
Right.
The fact is, you can look at a person, a woman that has puts lotion on, certain kinds of makeup, that will fluoresce. This fluorescence is different. It will penetrate your skin subdermally on contact. You can't scrape it off. The harder you scrub on it, the brighter it'll get. And most people, especially women who find fluorescence on them after an abduction, will run to the bathroom and they remind me of a rape victim. They will scrub themselves and cry as they scrub, and you can't get the stuff off.
Well, you think would be able to test that and see some sort of what it is, right? Or have we done
Absolutely. One doctor who is known fairly well in the UFO field told me, he said, Derrel, he said, we ought to get some of your fluorescence tested. And I said, I've got 14 samples waiting. And he said, well, some of those tests are going to run anywhere between $12,000 to $14,000 a piece. And I said, I'm taking up a collection today.
Right.
that? Wow, that's a shame. Because that, I mean, see, I'd like to get some of this. You say you're all about the evidence. That's a great thing. It's a shame we can't find a way to get that stuff, get to the bottom.
As good as that evidence is, it's still anecdotal. In other words, you didn't see it on there. You can't prove that how it got there, and so on and so on. You're going to have bullets fired at you from that perspective. The only physical evidence that you can really hold on to, so to speak, is something that's found inside someone.
Which is exactly what we want to go to next. Is these implants with Dr. Lear, et cetera, et cetera. What do we have any of those that have I know you've had a lot of those tested. Have any of those shown anything that really is promising?
Certainly, Dr. Lear, Roger Lear, before he passed away, I was his mentor. I brought the two first cases that he ever saw to him, and one of them was a hand surgery, and the other one was a foot surgery. And of course, he was a podiatrist; he couldn't do any other surgery than on the foot. But anyway, he didn't know what to look for or what to find, and I said there are specific ways that we have to go after this. Anyway, long story short, we did find evidence, and I'm very, very forthcoming about who assists and helps us in some of these, and the NIDS Foundation under Bob Bigelow and the scientists involved in his team there with the NIDS group. They reviewed our evidence. We did a presentation, and they said we would like for you to pick out certain ones of these alleged implants, and we want them tested. And I agreed to that, and the testing showed to be rare meteorites from a Widmanstatten of the Yaochung meteorite. Those are needle-like projections about a 1/4 inch long. And the most interesting thing I thought about it was not only were they extraterrestrial, which we know that there's other evidence we found from the alien that is terrestrial. So being extraterrestrial doesn't make it quote unquote necessarily alien.
Right.
It's just to human beings that sounds better. But the fact is, we found 11 different elements surrounding the first meteoric objects. 4 of these objects we found in 2 people, 3 in a lady and 1 in a man. That was fascinating in itself. It had 11 different elements that, according to the people who did the studies at Los Alamos and New Mexico Tech, these elements should not have been on the meteorite. Of course, they didn't realize they'd come from a human body. But the second most important find, in my view, was the biology. The biology, according to the pathologist, when he found out these things, the biology came out of the human being instead of at the surface of the human being, he said, that's impossible. That can't have happened. Keratinous material shows up, it's your surface skin, your hair, your fingernails. That doesn't show up inside the body. It doesn't grow next to the bone. And I said, well, we've got 17 witnesses. I've got video film and an attorney and 2 doctors myself. I did the hypnotic anesthesia. And he said, I don't care who was there. It didn't happen. It can happen. Keratinous material does not show up inside the body next to the bone. He went on and on and on about that. So that was more compelling for me, because there again, it's impossible for it to have been there. The most important thing was a man came forward who is a Nobel laureate. He said, Mr. Sims, if you could replicate that biology in a laboratory, you may have a Nobel laureate find right now, because organ donor rejection could be literally gone as a result of that discovery. And I said, I was born in Texas. I was born at night, 7:30 at night, but it wasn't last night. what laboratory do you think that I could send that to, that I could trust? And he said, not one.
Well, see, the thing is, we have corroborating evidence that it's not just somebody's got something in their body and you check it and there's an implant there. You have a story that they say, I saw an alien and he did this to me, and look, I can feel this. So that gives you some sort of a corroborating strength to the story that there's some physical evidence there.
Brilliant. I think that's on the front of my book, on the book on implants. It shows literally an object that looks kind of like I hate to use this term, but it kind of looks like it, a lifesaver inside this woman's skull. It's deep, it's inside next to the brain. And amazing, they found it accidentally. She was in a car accident in South America. The dentist, she had hit the front of the car in a double impact. She hit the front of the car, and they thought she might have broken her jaw. So they did a shot from the bottom up of the jaw straight up into her head to see if there was a broken part of her jaw or damaged her teeth. And he looked and he saw that object that we showed there on the book. And he says, what in the world is that? And it's up deep inside her skull. And she says, what? And the amazing part of that story, you could do a whole show on that one thing alone. That object went from one hemisphere to the other hemisphere. We don't know how it got there, if it traveled or if it moved, but we have radiographs, X-ray evidence from the time of that event where she had the accident to the 2 years later. That object was in the other hemisphere of the brain. And wow. That is again all on X-rays, and this is documented. It's a well-documented case. Then later the object disappeared. They obviously came and took it. Now she's got an object in her arm. It's on my website, alienhunter.org. You can actually see her playing with an object inside her arm under the skin, quite a large object. I told her, go get an X-ray. She did. It didn't show up on the X-ray. That doesn't make any sense. She's still playing with the object on her arm. It's still on the website. I said, go get me an MRI. It didn't show up on the MRI, according to her report. So I will go down to Brazil and I will determine this myself, because I will be there personally to make sure that these examinations are done properly. And number two, after that was all done and verified, then we will have the surgery and I'll do the hypnotic anesthesia. I will be present. The object will never leave my presence. We always make sure of that. And then we'll find out exactly what the object actually is under her skin in her arm.
This may be hard to prove, but have we ever, or you have ever heard of any ancient civilization, Egypt, Mayans, Incas, Hindu, anybody from that they've dug up in tombs or any graves that they found any type of implants that does not match material on Earth that you know of?
No. So far, as best I have, and I've been looking, and but now we occasionally hear a story of an implant in an ancient skull. But again, the bottom line is I need to see the object inside the skull,
right,
untampered with, and then it removed under forensic conditions, and then we'll look at it. Again, a chain of custody has to be present. If that's not going to happen, somebody hand me something, put it in their hand, say, see there, I found that in an ancient mummy skull. Right. I don't believe a word of it.
Yeah, see, we have that a lot. Roswell footage, we sent it off to the lab, and then it came back. It doesn't even look like what he had sent to them.
Right.
And
yeah,
I've actually got some of the I got some of the original film from Santilli himself. Reg Presley took me to Santilli put on a birthday party for Reg Presley before he passed away. And while there, I said, I'm going to ask him if I can have some of the film. He said, that man will never give you anything. I said, they all say that.
Right.
And he gave me he said, no. And about the fourth time I asked privately, he said, okay, but only to you. And I said, well, we need to get this evaluated to prove exactly how correct your story is. I never believed a word of his story, but that's not the point. There's 2 points about the Roswell film that's important. One is that the original, the film, there is an original part of that film that's correct. Most people do not know that. Ron Regier, a DSP satellite specialist, retired, has done a remarkable study on that. The bulk of the film is fake as it can be. Absolutely 100% fake. I was present when Philip Mantle showed it in Marseille, France. I didn't believe a word of it then.
And I think it's because over the thousands of years, when we do discover certain things, they immediately say, "Oh, this is from this era. This is written by. This was built by." And then 100, 200 years later, when we get more technology, they say, "Well, instead of 2,000 years old, this is actually 500 years old. It's a skull from a, just a monk." It wasn't the high priestess or whatever. So
all the Bigfoot's bones and stuff, they find out that it's a bear.
But it only takes one time, and that's what I love. What you're doing is you want to see the evidence. You don't just instantly believe and then start doing a lecture on it. That you actually want to go see and get the proof. Because
but we don't have anything that we can like take to the regular to the rest of the masses and say, look,
right.
Well, so far, I will clue you in on something I've never told anybody.
Oh, the exclusive right here. If I had a go ahead. I'm excited.
The story is I can't tell you.
Oh, geez.
The good news is
Fell for that
if it turns out to be real, and it's going to cost me several $1,000s to find out. But if the story turns out to be real, I assure you, there will be a long line of people in the news industry interested in the story.
This is what I'm waiting for.
You can take public.
Yes, I'm waiting for something that can convince non-believers and people that just dismiss this offhand right away. And it feels like we don't have that yet.
Well, I agree with you. I agree. We've got evidence in people. We've got things on people. We've got things around people. I even have two pieces of UFO that have been tested. The two objects that came from a UFO that have been tested in laboratories, even by NIDS and other organizations. And the stuff is absolutely remarkable. But still, that doesn't convince most skeptics. I don't care to convince them anyway, because I'm not here to convince anybody.
Right.
But I am willing to allow the evidence to be looked at. But as I said to you before, and I wasn't bragging when I made the statement, it is a noun, and it is also an adjective, and it is also a verb. I am the alien hunter. That's who I hunt. I'm not. His evidence is only something that I'm finding incidentally, because I think the techniques that I'm using are accurate. They're effective. They've allowed me 25 surgeries worldwide. And now our last surgery was in India 2 years ago. And my point, I could do another 5 surgeries today if I had the money to do them.
Wow.
Right now. One guy's got it behind his ear, right here, 7 different metallic objects inside a lump behind his ear. Right now. I mean, that could happen immediately. The point is that for the world, they're going to want to see something dramatic. And that may happen in the next year or two. Who knows?
I hope so. Well, let me ask you this real quick. You have that case of the woman who claimed that she was picked up every 2 or 3 weeks from a group of aliens, and it went on for 30 years. And it was consistently she was picked up every couple of weeks. Couldn't we, surveil her house from every possible angle and watch her and try to catch something?
There is an anecdotal story that I will be talking about at the Contact in the Desert, which I consider to be an absolutely wonderful conference.
It's the best one.
Yeah, it's awesome. It is. There's no question about that. But in this case, the person was in a hospital. I've got a number of cases in hospitals. They're actually, well, I'm going to give you 2 stories. Both these will blow you out of the water. The first case is 5 nurses taking care of a patient in a controlled area. That's a glassed-in area. That's the reason for it may be disease or whatever. A controlled area, and out of respect to the patient, because she was a lesbian woman in coma, they wanted to they use all female nurses, which I thought was very considerate. The point is that in a controlled environment with the cameras on at all times, all of the nurses, including the patient, a comatose lesbian woman, all ended up pregnant that night.
Wow.
Provable. All of the people lost the fetuses with the exception of one woman. And I have met the daughter, and obviously we're not going to put her on, that's not going to happen. But I have met the daughter, and she looked at me and she says, "You study all that weird UFO stuff?" I said, "Yes, I do." She said, "On your card, it says you're a handwriting analyst." And I said, "Yes, ma'am." "Could you do mine?" I said, "I can't unless you write." So she wrote a bunch of stuff. She says, "Oh my God, it's like you're reading my mail." And I said, "Well, I haven't been in your mailbox lately, but I guarantee you one thing, your handwriting is your brain writing. And I'm reading exactly what's going on inside your head." And she was amazed, but that's the first story. The second story is this. This recently happened. It's been on the internet. It's a true story. A guy goes in for an operation. So he's been anesthetized. He's recovering. They removed a kidney or some part of it was damaged inside him in his abdomen. So he's in a recovery room. He's pretty much knocked out from leftover anesthesia. And I mean, he's in bad shape and he just can't move. The nurse leaves the room, goes out, comes back in because she's going to change his sheets, and he's gone. This guy can't get up and move. He can't do anything. He's missing from the hospital. All the cameras in the hospital, nothing records him. So anyway, they call the police, they call security, and they're looking all over the hospital, closets and everywhere. Where did this guy wander off to and hide? Well, he can't walk. What do you mean? Where did he hide? They finally, 2 weeks later, smelled him. The body is in between layers of the hospital in the floor. Now, when I say that, there's a sheetrock wall, a ceiling, and there's a hardwood, there's a floor in between. There's no place, there's not a crawl space, there's nothing there. He could have gotten there. Somehow he got in between the walls and died there in the floor of the hospital. So, of course, nobody can figure this out. They're all stunned and rattled and everything else. But if you're taken as an alien abductee, they take you off and through the ceiling out. Maybe he got stuck between the two. They do make mistakes. As I've told Bud Hopkins, sometimes the small gray alien has an IQ of about 80. That's a level of a moron, in case you don't know.
Hey, don't make
Tony's
fun of
well
me.
aware
I was going to say, don't make
an
fun
80.
of me.
I would never say that to your face publicly. But the fact is that these entities are made, hatched, cloned, and manufactured for this purpose. They're to do simple jobs. They often can't get your clothes on right. If there's 2 or 3 people in the room or a bunch of people, sometimes they'll come back with the other person's clothes on.
Yeah, to me, that's strong. I like that.
It's very, very common. So they make mistakes. We had 2 of our abductees that were small children dropped off in a neighbor's swimming pool. They were taken from a wading pool on the front of the house where they were wading in the pool. They were dropped off in a neighbor's double enclosed swimming pool, and those 2 children drowned as a result. They make mistakes. Bud Hopkins admits the same thing when he was alive.
Well, Derrel, we unfortunately our time is up, and we could go on for another couple hours. I know we could. We're going to have you back. One question before we get out of here, and I want to see if you can answer that either quickly or the next time we come on or have you on. Is it possible? Ron brought something up that's saying, can we do a surveillance? Is it possible to get abducted like the Matrix or even Avatar through almost like our spirit leaves our body, taking the abduction of our spirit and leaving the body behind, and still be able to do the implants? Yeah.
Some of the abductions, about 80% of people taken in these events, it happens in their own home. They never physically.
They don't go anywhere.
So, okay.
20% of them are gone. They literally disappear. They will literally be floated out. And and there is good evidence of this.
Physically, yeah.
Absolutely, physically. The fluorescence will be on them if they've physically been taken. If you haven't, don't have fluorescence on you, and you've had a real event, there's a good possibility that these events are happening interdimensionally,
Right.
and there's good credibility for that thinking.
All right. Well, more conversation coming up at Contact in the Desert, May 31st through June 3rd. Derrel's going to be there, has a couple of workshops and lectures. You're going to not want to miss it. And as always, it's a pleasure to have you on the show.
It's a pleasure, gentlemen.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Well, stick around. We have another great guest coming up for the next hour. It's Brian Forrester. And you can go to alienhunters.org and check more of Derrel Sims's books and videos and other interviews. So please support him, and please go to Contact in the Desert. So until next time, I'm Tony Sweet, and for
Captain Ron.
All right. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.